My husband disappeared one day, leaving me with a $20,000 debt and no way to reach him. As I sat crying, my 10-year-old daughter said, "Don't worry. I fixed it." 3 days later, he called me in a panic after realizing that it was a day like any other, or so I thought. The kind of day where nothing ever seems out of the ordinary until it all falls apart. I was sitting in the living room of our modest apartment, trying to calm my racing thoughts as I glanced at the overdue bills scattered across the coffee table. My heart sank each time I picked up one of those letters, each one a reminder of a debt I couldn't even begin to pay. My husband Tom had always taken care of the finances, or so I thought. But when he vanished 3 days ago without a word, it wasn't just the debts I was left with. It was the confusion, the betrayal, and the overwhelming realization that I was utterly alone. Before we get into the heart of this story, I just want to express my gratitude for your support. If you're captivated by this tale of unexpected twists and strength, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It's completely free and it ensures you never miss a moment of this thrilling journey. Now let's dive deep into what happens next. I had tried calling him dozens of times, sending message after message, but no response. His phone went straight to voicemail, and every call to his friends or family yielded nothing. Tom wasn't the type of person to just disappear. He'd always been a good provider, a loving father, and a man who would never abandon his family. But the sudden silence, the complete disappearance, it didn't make sense. What was happening? The weight of it all was unbearable. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't focus on anything other than the questions swirling in my mind. And then, just as I was sinking deeper into despair, a voice broke through the fog. My 10-year-old daughter Lily walked into the room and sat beside me. She didn't seem worried at all, as if everything was going to be okay despite the chaos we were now living in. Her innocent smile made my heart ache even more. "Don't worry, Mom," she said in a soft yet strangely confident voice. "I fixed it." I froze, unable to comprehend what she was saying. What did she mean, fixed it? How could she possibly have fixed anything? She was just a child, and there was no way she could have done anything about the mess Tom had left behind. But Lily didn't seem concerned. She simply looked at me with those big, trusting eyes, as though everything would be all right. I couldn't help but wonder what she meant by that. What followed in the next few days would be the most unexpected twist of all. 3 days later, when the despair had almost completely overtaken me, the phone rang. My heart skipped a beat when I saw Tom's name on the screen. I hadn't heard from him since he left, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to face whatever explanation he might have for his sudden disappearance. "Tom?" I asked, my voice shaky with both anger and confusion. There was a long pause before he spoke, and when he did, his words sent a chill down my spine. I made a huge mistake," he said, his voice cracking. "And I don't know how to fix it. I need you to listen carefully. This is bigger than I thought." I sat back, my mind racing. "What are you talking about? Where have you been? And what happened to all this debt? Why didn't you tell me about any of this?" Tom sighed, and I could hear the strain in his voice. "I thought I could handle it. I thought I could hide it from you. But I couldn't. I was gambling, I was trying to pay off some debts, and I made things worse. I thought I could escape, but now I realize the mess I left you in." I was stunned. Betrayed. I had always trusted Tom, and this revelation shattered everything I had believed about our life together. My thoughts were spinning, and I could barely make sense of what he was saying. But there was one thing I couldn't ignore. The fact that he was calling me now in a panic after everything he'd put me through. "I'm sorry," he repeated, his voice filled with guilt. "But there's something you don't know. Lily, she's the one who's been handling everything." I felt a chill run through me. What was he talking about? How could Lily, my 10-year-old daughter, have been involved in any of this? I couldn't understand it. How was it possible? "Lily?" I asked, barely able to comprehend what he was saying. "What do you mean? What has she done?" Tom hesitated, then his voice dropped to a whisper. "She knew. She knew about the debt, about everything. And she took matters into her own hands. I don't know how she did it, but she fixed the situation. She's the one who made sure things were taken care of. I don't know how she did it, but she's the reason I'm calling you now." I was silent for a moment, trying to process what Tom had just said. My mind was racing, and I couldn't quite grasp the magnitude of the situation. My daughter, my sweet, innocent little girl, had somehow figured out how to deal with the mess her father had created. How had she done it? And why hadn't she said anything to me? Before I could ask any more questions, Tom continued, his voice filled with panic. I don't know how she did it, but she's not just a little girl anymore. She's smarter than I ever gave her credit for. I didn't want to believe it, but now I realize, she's the one who's been keeping everything together. She's fixed things in ways I can't even begin to explain. And now, because of what she did, I'm in deep trouble. I couldn't make sense of it. My daughter, the one I had always thought of as innocent, had been secretly managing the very thing that had torn our family apart. I needed answers, but I wasn't sure I was ready to face the truth. Tom, I said, my voice trembling. What are you talking about? What has Lily done? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Finally, Tom spoke, his voice barely a whisper. She's the reason I'm in trouble. She's the reason I'm calling you now. And it's because of her that everything's about to change. I was shaken to my core. The reality of the situation was beginning to hit me, and the questions I had were growing by the minute. How had my daughter known? How had she fixed everything? And why was Tom now in a state of panic? What happened next would shake me even further, leading to revelations that would forever change the course of our lives. The story was just beginning, and I wasn't sure I was ready for the truth. I couldn't get the image of Tom's voice out of my head. That tone of panic, how could I have missed it all these years? I had always thought our marriage was solid. Sure, there were ups and downs like any relationship, but nothing that felt like a bomb waiting to go off. Yet here I was, sitting in the same room where we had once laughed together, holding our daughter's tiny hand while she calmly told me that everything would be fixed. How did she know? What did she mean? It didn't make sense. I felt like my whole world had been turned upside down, and nothing about this situation seemed right. Tom and I had been married for almost 12 years. We met when I was just 22, fresh out of college, full of ambition and hope for a future filled with love and success. Tom was the kind of man who could make everyone laugh. He had that charm, quick with a joke and always the life of the party. He made me feel safe. He made me feel like I was the center of his universe. I remember thinking that I was the luckiest woman alive when he asked me to marry him. We built a life together. A modest life, but one filled with love and laughter. And then of course came Lily. Lily was our miracle baby, born after years of trying. She was everything to us. The light of our lives, the one person who could always put a smile on our faces no matter how hard the day had been. Tom and I had been partners in every sense of the word, from managing our modest home to raising our daughter. I had stayed home with Lily while Tom worked long hours, convinced that he was securing our future. And for a while it felt like everything was going as planned. We were happy, at least I thought we were. But now I wondered, how much of our happiness had been a facade? How much had I missed in my trust in him? There were signs, I suppose, signs I should have noticed. Tom's late nights had become more frequent. He'd always come home exhausted, but these days it was different. He had become distant, withdrawn, as if something was gnawing at him from the inside. But I brushed it off. After all, we all go through tough times, right? I convinced myself that his stress was just from work or whatever else he was dealing with. How foolish I had been. When he disappeared without a word, it felt like a punch to the gut. I spent hours, no, days, trying to find out where he had gone, what had happened. The silence was deafening. And then, of course, the bills. The debt. The sinking feeling that perhaps maybe I hadn't known my husband as well as I thought. He had left me holding the bag with nothing to show for it but a mountain of unpaid bills and unanswered questions. But that phone call 3 days later was a revelation in itself. Hearing Tom on the other end of the line, his voice cracking with panic, was not what I expected. It wasn't the voice of the man I thought I knew. There was fear in his tone, desperation, and a sense of accountability that I had never heard from him before. But what shocked me the most was his admission. Lily, she's the one who's been handling everything. The weight of his words hit me harder than anything else. My daughter, my sweet Lily, who was only 10 years old, had somehow managed to fix the disaster her father had left behind? I didn't know whether to be furious or relieved. How could a child, a girl still so innocent in so many ways, have been involved in something like this? And why hadn't she told me? Why hadn't I known? I had to know more. I needed to understand how my daughter, the same one who still relied on me to tie her shoes, could be so involved in something that seemed so adult. The realization that Lily was somehow the key to fixing the mess her father had made sent a wave of confusion through me. How could I reconcile the image of my innocent child with the possibility that she had orchestrated something beyond my comprehension? I wasn't sure what to do with the information. My mind raced, filled with questions that didn't have immediate answers. How much did she know? What exactly had she done to fix things? And what did Tom mean by saying everything was about to change? Was he in danger? Was he scared because of something my daughter had done? The days that followed were filled with a strange mixture of tension and disbelief. I found myself watching Lily more closely than ever before, trying to read her face, to find any clue that might explain what had transpired in the days since Tom's disappearance. I wasn't sure whether I should confront her, or if I should wait for her to come to me with the truth. But what truth was she hiding? Was she hiding something at all? There were moments when I thought I saw something flicker behind her eyes. A kind of understanding, a knowing that wasn't supposed to be there. She was different. But was she just growing up? Or had she crossed some invisible line into a world that I couldn't even begin to understand? Then one evening as I was cleaning up the kitchen, I heard her voice again, soft but steady as though she had been waiting for the right moment. "Mom," she said, "I knew something was wrong. And I knew I had to fix it." The words hit me like a wave. "Fix it?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. Lily nodded, her eyes not meeting mine as if she couldn't bear to look at me. "I knew you were scared and I knew you didn't know what to do. So I did it for you." My heart skipped a beat. "What did you do, Lily? How did you fix all of this?" She paused, gathering her thoughts as if choosing her words carefully. "I made some calls. I talked to people. I found a way to make things right." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My 10-year-old daughter. How could she possibly have been in contact with anyone to resolve a grown-up mess like this? My mind reeled with the possibilities, none of them good. What kind of world had I unwittingly allowed my daughter to step into? But before I could press her further, she said something that would leave me speechless. "Dad's in trouble, Mom. He's not coming back unless you help him. You're the only one who can." I felt my breath catch in my throat. What was she saying? How did she know these things? And why was she suddenly asking for my help? This was beyond anything I had ever imagined. My own daughter, carrying the weight of a secret far too big for her small shoulders. With those few words, Lily had set into motion a new chain of events, one that would lead to a truth I wasn't ready to face. How far had Tom gone? How deep had my daughter gotten involved? And most importantly, what price would we all have to pay for the things that were already set in motion? As the words fell from Lily's lips, my world seemed to crumble even further. She knew, she understood, and I was utterly lost. Tom had vanished, leaving me with the weight of his debts and no way of knowing how deep the hole really was. But now Lily, my sweet little girl, was telling me things that only added layers of confusion and dread to an already impossible situation. I felt the icy grip of panic rising in my chest. How had we gotten here? How had I missed so much? Tom's disappearance had been shocking, but now the truth was becoming more complex than I could have ever imagined. My heart ached as I tried to put the pieces together. My daughter wasn't just a bystander in this mess, she was part of it. And her words made it clear. It wasn't just about money or a few bad decisions. Something much darker was at play. The more I tried to process the situation, the more questions piled up. I needed to understand what had happened in the days since Tom left. I needed to know exactly how Lily was involved and, more importantly, how she had been so calm while I was drowning in anxiety and despair. There was something unsettling about the way she spoke, like she had already planned everything. But how? Why hadn't she come to me? I was her mother after all. Didn't she trust me enough to share whatever burden she was carrying? That evening I decided to confront her. Sitting across from her at the kitchen table, I found myself searching her face for any sign of hesitation or guilt, but there was nothing. She was too composed, too confident in a way that didn't match her age. It was as if she had carried this secret for far longer than I had been able to see. "Lily," I began, trying to steady my voice, "what exactly did you do? How did you fix this? What are you talking about when you say Dad's in trouble? What do you mean you're the only one who can help him?" Her gaze shifted slightly as if she were considering how much to reveal. She wasn't afraid though. If anything, she seemed to be waiting for me to catch up with her. "I didn't have a choice," she said quietly, almost to herself. "I knew you couldn't handle everything. You were so upset. I didn't want to see you like that anymore." It wasn't the answer I was expecting. My heart sank even further. What did she mean I couldn't handle everything? I had always done my best to shield her from the hardships of adult life, Yet here she was, telling me she had taken matters into her own hands. This was no longer just about Tom's betrayal. It was about my own failure to see what was right in front of me. Lily, I whispered, my voice breaking, you're just a child. How could you possibly know what to do? I had to learn, she replied, her voice surprisingly steady. I had to figure out how to stop everything from falling apart. Her words sent a shiver down my spine. What had she been doing behind my back? Who had she been talking to? My mind raced as the realization hit me. Tom's disappearance wasn't the only thing that had been orchestrated. Lily had been pulling strings in the background, and I had no idea what she had gotten herself into. I'm scared, I confessed, my voice trembling as I looked into her eyes. I don't know how we got here, Lily. I don't know what to do next. I can't even fix this. I don't even know where to begin. Lily's gaze softened, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the little girl I had always known. She reached across the table and took my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Don't worry, Mom. You're not alone. I've got it. Her words should have comforted me, but they didn't. They only made the situation feel more unreal. I had no idea how to process any of this. My daughter was carrying more weight on her shoulders than I could ever have imagined. It was one thing to be betrayed by my husband, but it was another entirely to know that my child had somehow taken on the responsibility of fixing his mistakes. And now she was telling me that it wasn't just about the money. It was about Tom's life, his safety, and the mess he had created for us all. I could feel my heart racing in my chest, but it wasn't just fear. It was a mixture of frustration, anger, and disbelief. How had I missed this? How had I not seen the signs that my daughter was struggling with something so heavy? I thought I was protecting her, but in reality I was the one who had failed her. The next morning I found myself pacing around the house, trying to make sense of everything. Lily had been quiet all evening, retreating into her room after our conversation. I wanted to believe she had everything under control, but something inside me told me that this wasn't over. There were still too many questions, too many loose ends. And then, just as I was about to call Tom again, hoping for answers, the phone rang. It wasn't Tom's number that appeared on the screen, but a strange, unfamiliar one. My stomach dropped as I stared at the number, unsure of what to do. Should I answer it? Was this another part of the mess Tom had created? I hesitated for only a moment before pressing the green button. Hello, I said, my voice shaky. A deep, unfamiliar voice responded. You don't know who I am, but I know who you are. And I know what's been happening. We need to talk. I froze, my heart skipping a beat. Who is this? What did they know? And how were they connected to all of this? Who is this? I demanded, my voice trembling with both fear and curiosity. Let's just say I've been keeping an eye on things. And if you want to help Tom, if you want to save him, you're going to have to follow my instructions. Don't do anything on your own. You're not the only one in danger here. The line went dead before I could say another word. I stood there holding the phone, completely stunned. Was this the person Lily had been working with? Was this the reason Tom had been so scared? I had no answers, only more questions. But now I knew one thing for certain. Whatever was going on, it was far from over. And I had no idea where this twisted path would lead us next. The voice on the phone had rattled me. I was still standing in the same spot, holding the phone to my ear long after the call had ended, my mind reeling from the cryptic words. You're not the only one in danger here. What did that even mean? And who was this person really? The fact that they knew so much about Tom and my situation made my skin crawl. I had to understand what was going on, who was behind all of this, and how it was connected to the web of lies my husband had created. I had no choice but to take action. I could feel a sense of urgency creeping into my bones, driving me to do something, anything to take control of the situation. But what could I do? How could I possibly handle this on my own when everything felt like it was slipping through my fingers? And then there was Lily, my daughter, the one who had seemingly fixed everything. Or had she? Was she really the mastermind behind all of this, or was she being manipulated by forces far beyond her understanding? I couldn't afford to sit idly by any longer. The phone call had been a turning point. It was a warning, but it was also a clue. Someone out there had power over the situation, and I needed to know who they were. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. I decided to start by looking into the number that had called me. With a trembling hand, I dialed it again, praying that I'd reach whoever it was that had spoken to me before. The line rang for what felt like an eternity before it was picked up, and I held my breath. Hello, I said, my voice a mixture of fear and determination. There was a brief silence on the other end before the deep voice answered. You're getting smarter, I see. Good. It's about time you figured it out. Who are you? I demanded, feeling my pulse quicken. And what do you want from me? Why are you involved in all of this? I don't have time for explanations, but I'll give you one. Tom made a mistake and now so have you, the voice said. Your next move will determine how this all plays out. You have to decide if you want to save him, or if you want to make sure he pays for what he's done. I felt the weight of the words sink into me like lead. Save him? After everything? Was he even worth saving? Tom had destroyed everything. He'd abandoned us, left me with nothing but a mess of his own making. But then there was Lily. Lily, who had been a part of this. Lily, who had made choices I couldn't even begin to understand. Could I really let him suffer knowing that my daughter might be the key to fixing it all? Or was there something even more dangerous at play? Listen carefully, the voice continued. You're going to need to make a deal. There are people who want Tom gone. And if you don't act fast, they'll make sure he never comes back. You're not in control here, but you can be. It's your choice. The phone clicked and the line went dead. My heart raced as I stood there, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was happening. This wasn't just about money. This wasn't just about a failing marriage or a man running from his mistakes. This was bigger. I had no idea what I had stepped into, but I knew one thing for sure. I was in it now. And I wasn't about to let it all slip away without a fight. I turned back to Lily, who had been quietly sitting in the living room, watching me with those wide, innocent eyes. She knew more than she was letting on. I could see it in the way she was watching me now, as if she were waiting for me to ask the right questions. But I couldn't bring myself to ask her just yet. The fear of what I might uncover kept me silent, even as the storm of uncertainty swirled around us. Instead, I focused on the task at hand. Tom's disappearance, the debts, the people involved, and the phone call. It was all connected. I knew I had to act quickly or else I'd lose everything. But what was the right move? What could I do that would change the course of this twisted mess? Revenge. It had always been the last thing on my mind. But now it seemed like my only option. If I didn't take control, I was going to lose my husband and my daughter to forces beyond my understanding. I started piecing together what I knew. Tom had been hiding his debts, gambling, and making deals that had put us all at risk. And now, the people who had been after him were threatening to take everything from us. The thought of losing Lily, of having her dragged into a world of corruption and danger, pushed me forward. I wasn't going to let that happen. Not on my watch. The first thing I did was gather information. I knew I had to find out more about the people Tom had been involved with. Who they were, what they wanted, and how far they would go to get what they wanted. I wasn't going to let them control me. I had to be smarter than that. I spent hours searching through Tom's papers, his computer files, and his contacts, trying to uncover any clue that could give me leverage. It wasn't easy, but I was determined. I couldn't afford to fail now. As I worked, I found something that made my heart stop. There was a name that kept popping up in Tom's communications. A name I hadn't seen before. James Carson. Whoever he was important. And I was starting to get the feeling that he was the key to everything. I did a quick search on my phone and my stomach dropped when I saw the results. James Carson wasn't just a name in Tom's business dealings. He was a well-known figure in the underworld. Someone who had connections that stretched far beyond what I had imagined. He was dangerous, and if he was involved, things were worse than I thought. Suddenly, everything felt like it was spiraling out of control. Tom's mistake wasn't just a simple gambling issue. It was part of a larger scheme, one that involved people who would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. And the more I uncovered, the more I realized that my family was in far deeper than I had ever imagined. The plan was starting to form in my mind. It wasn't about saving Tom anymore. It was about saving Lily and myself from a future I couldn't even begin to understand. I had to outsmart these people, use their own tactics against them. And it was going to take everything I had. The stakes were higher than ever, and the time to act was now. I wasn't going to wait for things to fall apart any longer. As I set my plan into motion, I couldn't help but wonder if I had crossed a line I couldn't come back from. Was I becoming the very thing I feared? A part of me was scared of what I was about to do. But the other part, the part that had been pushed to the edge by betrayal, was ready for whatever came next. The game had changed and I was determined to win. The air in the room felt thick, charged with anticipation as I sat there, my mind racing. I had set my plan in motion and now I was waiting for the first domino to fall. James Carson's name was a key to understanding just how deep the hole really went, and I knew that getting to him was the only way to put an end to this madness. But as I began to execute my plan, something unexpected happened. I wasn't the only one playing the game anymore. The first move had been simple enough. I made contact with one of Tom's old associates, a man named Victor who I knew had ties to the people who were after him. I was careful with my approach, knowing that one wrong move could expose everything. I pretended to be desperate enough to believe that I could still save Tom, to believe that the mess could still be undone. Victor had been hesitant at first, but I'd offered him a deal, an offer he couldn't refuse. He agreed to meet in person. The location was set, an old, abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. It was a place where deals were made and broken, where the air smelled of dust and betrayal. I arrived there early, waiting, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it. This was where it all changed. I had the upper hand and I wasn't going to waste it. As the minutes passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I tried to push it aside. After all, I had a plan and I had no intention of letting fear stop me. But as I watched Victor approach, my gut clenched. He wasn't alone. There were two others with him, men I didn't recognize, but who carried themselves with an air of authority and menace. The situation had shifted without me even realizing it. This wasn't just about saving Tom anymore. This was about survival. Victor's eyes flickered to the men behind him, then back to me. "You should have stayed out of this," he said, his voice low, almost regretful. "It's too late for you to get involved." My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't expected this. I hadn't expected Victor to know. But before I could process his words, the door to the warehouse creaked open, and in walked someone I never thought I'd see again. Tom. He was looking disheveled, his clothes torn, his face gaunt. There was no mistaking the terror in his eyes. He was not the man I had once loved, not the man I had trusted. This was a man who had lost control of everything. He stumbled into the room, his eyes meeting mine with a mixture of guilt and something else. Something darker. "You shouldn't have come here," he muttered, his voice shaking. "They've been following me. I didn't know how to stop it. I couldn't tell you, but I didn't think you'd get caught up in all of this." The words hung in the air like a thick fog. What was he saying? Why had he never warned me? Why hadn't he trusted me with the truth? I could feel my anger rising, my pulse quickening. But I didn't have time to dwell on it. The situation had escalated and there was no turning back now. Before I could respond, one of the men behind Victor stepped forward, his eyes locked on mine. "You don't get to ask questions," he said, his tone cold. "We have a deal with your husband and now you're part of it." I stepped back, trying to regain control of the situation. "What deal? What are you talking about?" "I don't know anything about this," I said, my voice trembling. The man smirked. "Oh, you're more involved than you think. You see, your husband's debts weren't just money, he owed more than just cash. He owed favors that now extend to you. You're in this now whether you like it or not." The world seemed to spin around me. I had known there was more to this than I could see, but I never imagined it would go this far. Tom had been playing a dangerous game and now it seemed like everyone involved was paying the price. My mind raced. This wasn't just about a few bad choices anymore. This was a full-blown mess, a life-or-death situation that I had no control over. Victor stepped forward, his gaze sharp. "You should have stayed out of it, but now you're in too deep. We'll make sure you understand that." Suddenly, everything clicked into place. My daughter. The way she had acted. The way she had taken charge, handling things that I couldn't even begin to understand. Lily hadn't just been fixing Tom's mistakes. She had been setting up her own plan, preparing us for what was coming. I hadn't been the one calling the shots. Lily had been. I turned to her in disbelief, my heart sinking. Lily had been planning everything. She had been orchestrating all of this behind my back, pulling strings, making deals. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. But then, just as the situation seemed to spiral completely out of control, Lily walked into the warehouse, her small figure cutting through the tension like a knife. She wasn't scared. She wasn't shaking. In fact, she looked calm, too calm for a 10-year-old who should have been terrified by the scene before her. "Enough," she said, her voice steady. The room went silent as everyone turned to face her. She was holding something in her hand, something that shimmered in the dim light. It was a piece of paper folded neatly. She walked towards Victor and handed it to him. "This changes everything," Lily said softly. Victor took the paper from her, his expression unreadable. He unfolded it slowly, and as he read the words on the page, his face went pale. The silence was deafening. Then, in an instant, everything exploded. Victor crumpled the paper in his hands and threw it to the ground, his eyes widening in shock. How could you have gotten this? Lily didn't answer. Instead, she turned to face me, a hint of pride in her eyes. I told you, Mom. I fixed it. In that moment, everything made sense. Lily had been the one who had outsmarted them all. She had played them, manipulated them, and had been in control of the situation from the very beginning. The twists, the turns, the betrayal, it was all part of her plan. The vengeance was hers to claim. The room fell into chaos as Victor and his men scrambled, trying to understand what had just happened. They had been outwitted by a child. And in that moment I knew Lily had done what I couldn't. She had saved us all. And as the dust settled, I realized that the game wasn't over. It had only just begun. As the last echo of chaos died down in the warehouse, I stood there, unable to process the sudden shift in power. The room, once filled with threats and tension, now felt oddly still. Victor and his men, defeated and stunned, had no words left. They couldn't comprehend how they had been outsmarted, how everything they had believed they controlled had slipped right through their fingers. But none of this mattered to me. The only thing that mattered was Lily. She had done it. My little girl, who I had once believed was too innocent to understand the world's darkest corners, had orchestrated everything. From the moment she had whispered that she had fixed it, I knew I had been living in the shadows of something far bigger than I could comprehend. And now, as the dust settled, I understood the depths of her brilliance. Lily, I finally breathed, my voice shaking. How did you know? Her small frame, barely coming up to my waist, stood tall in the midst of the wreckage her plan had caused. She turned to face me, a calm smile playing at the edges of her lips, one that I had never seen before, so much more mature than the one I had known. I knew, Mom. I had to know. You were too focused on saving Dad, and I couldn't let anything happen to you. Her words stung me in a way I didn't expect. She had seen my weakness, my hesitation, my inability to act fast enough. And in her childlike wisdom, she had taken control. She had seen the pieces I couldn't see, and now, all of a sudden, I was the one left playing catch-up. Before I could process everything she had just said, the phone in my pocket buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize, and the pit in my stomach tightened as I answered it. Hello, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, still reeling from the events unfolding in front of me. Is everything taken care of? It was a calm, measured voice, one that didn't belong to anyone I had met so far. It was the same voice that had spoken to me on the phone days ago, the one that had hinted at dangers beyond what I could understand. It is, I replied cautiously, my mind racing as the implications of this conversation started to sink in. Good, the voice responded. Because now it's time to collect. Your debt is paid, but there's still work to be done. You can't just walk away from this, you know. I felt the blood drain from my face as I looked at Lily. What debt? What work? What had she gotten us into? I wanted to scream at the voice on the phone to demand answers, but all I could do was listen. My daughter had set everything in motion, but now there was no turning back. You don't control me, I finally spat, shaking with the intensity of it all. This ends now. The voice on the other end of the line chuckled softly as if it knew something I didn't. It doesn't work that way. Not anymore. With that, the line went dead, leaving me in a cold, deafening silence. My hands trembled as I slowly lowered the phone, my heart pounding. I turned to Lily, searching her face for some sign of reassurance, but all I saw was a quiet certainty in her eyes, one that sent a shiver down my spine. Mom, it's not over. It's never been over. She said the words so matter-of-factly that I almost didn't believe them at first. But then the full weight of what she had done, and what I had allowed her to do, began to dawn on me. I had trusted her, yes, but I had also unknowingly placed my faith in forces I couldn't control. Forces that now held both my husband's fate and mine in their hands. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about survival. I moved toward the door of the warehouse, unsure of what I was going to do next. The plan had worked, yes. The immediate danger was over. But now I had to face the aftermath. The people behind this, Victor, Carson, the ones pulling the strings in the shadows, would not let us go without a price. I had no doubt they would come back for what they believed was owed to them. As we stepped outside into the cold night air, the weight of what had happened slowly began to sink in. Lily had helped us navigate the storm, but in doing so she had led us into even deeper waters. The world I thought I knew was now unrecognizable, and I was left with more questions than answers. I looked down at Lily, whose face was unreadable now, as if she had closed off a part of herself that I could never reach. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice thick with uncertainty. "We keep moving forward, Mom," she said, her voice calm. "This is just the beginning." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that she was too young, that she couldn't possibly understand the ramifications of what we were facing. But the truth was, she did understand. She had always understood more than I gave her credit for. She had played the game better than anyone, and now it seemed she was prepared to face whatever came next. And that terrified me. Days passed, and the aftermath of the warehouse confrontation settled into an uneasy peace. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the moment when we would be thrust back into the chaos that had consumed us. But it never came, at least not in the way I expected. The threat was still out there, lingering like a dark cloud waiting to burst, but for now we were safe. I took a long, hard look at my life, at the choices I had made, and at the daughter who had proven herself capable of far more than I could ever have imagined. She wasn't just the innocent little girl I thought she was. She was something more, something capable of great things and terrible things, all in the name of survival. The phone buzzed again. This time it was a message, simple and to the point. "You're not done yet. There's always more to this game. Be ready." I looked at Lily, who was now standing beside me, her gaze unwavering. I had no idea what was coming next, but I knew one thing for sure. I would never be the same again. Neither of us would be. We had crossed a line, and we had no choice but to follow wherever it led. But deep down I realized something. Whatever happened next, we would face it together. And in that moment, I knew we were stronger than anything the world could throw at us.